a $500 million fortune, a palatial mansion with a gleaming 20-foot marble staircase, a beautiful, pregnant wife. Brenton Montgomery had it all, but on a rain-slicked Tuesday night, that perfect life shattered. The 911 call was chillingly calm. My wife, she's taken a tumble. But when paramedics arrived, they found Lauren Montgomery at the bottom of the stairs, unconscious, bleeding, and no longer pregnant. Detectives found one thing that didn't add up: a single, broken fingernail, caught on the silk of her husband's suit jacket. This wasn't an accident. This was a cold, calculated execution, and the motive was buried in an ironclad contract designed to protect his billions. This is the story of how a perfect husband became a monster, and the fall that exposed it all. The house, known as Greylock, was not a home. It was a statement. Perched high in the exclusive hills of Medina, Washington, it stared across Lake Washington at the Seattle skyline, a fortress of glass, steel, and cold, imported Italian marble. Its owner, Brenton Montgomery, had inherited a shipping empire and transformed it into a global logistics behemoth. He was 42, with a face that belonged on the cover of a finance magazine, sharp, handsome, and utterly unreadable. His wife, Lauren, was 29. She had been an art curator at a small gallery Brenton's company had sponsored. She was warm, intelligent, and, to Brenton's circle, suspiciously normal. They had been married for 2 years, a whirlwind romance that had cooled into a structured, isolating domesticity. Lauren's life was dictated by schedules set by Brenton's assistant. Her outfits were often suggested by Brenton himself. Her friends, the few she had left from her old life, found it difficult to get past the gates of Greylock. "It's for security," Brenton would say, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder. The centerpiece of the house was the staircase. It was a marvel of engineering, a floating spiral of white and grey-veined marble, unsupported by any visible pillar, cascading from the master suite wing down to the immense, echoing foyer. It was Brenton's pride. Lauren hated it. It was cold underfoot, and the acoustics were such that every whispered argument in the foyer travelled up to the bedrooms, and every raised voice from the top floor thundered down to the bottom. In the 3rd year of their marriage, Lauren discovered she was pregnant. She had been thrilled, naively believing this would be the key to unlocking the man she had fallen in love with, the man who had since been replaced by a corporate automaton. She waited for him to return from a business trip to Singapore, setting out a tiny pair of designer booties on his pillow. Brenton's reaction was not what she expected. He didn't smile. He didn't rush to hold her. He simply stared at the booties, his jaw tightening. "Is this confirmed?" he asked, his voice flat. "Yes, this morning," Lauren beamed, her smile faltering. "I'm 10 weeks along." "Brenton, we're going to be parents." 10 weeks, he repeated, picking up one booty and examining it as if it were a flawed specimen. "You should have told me you were trying." It just happened. Aren't you happy?" Brenton finally looked at her, his steel-grey eyes calculating. "Of course, Lauren. A child. An heir." He put the booty down. "We will need to adjust the quarterly projections for the foundation, and your diet must be strictly managed. I'll have my assistant send you the new protocol. No more of that. Gluten-free bread you prefer. The child needs proper nutrition." The joy drained from Lauren, replaced by the familiar chill. He hadn't kissed her. He hadn't touched her stomach. He had simply opened a new file in the cabinet of his mind, labeled Project Heir. Over the next 2 months, Lauren's pregnancy became another facet of Brenton's control. He monitored her food, her exercise, her sleep. He forbade her from telling her own family back in Oregon. "We will make a joint announcement at the Q4 gala," he'd stated. "It's cleaner that way." Lauren, now 18 weeks pregnant, felt the first flutter of her baby and a new, unfamiliar surge of rebellious courage. The baby was real. It wasn't a project. It was a person. Her person. The night of October 28th, a Tuesday, the rain was relentless, lashing against the 30-foot windows of Greylock. Brenton was in his study, on a conference call that had lasted 4 hours. Lauren was in their suite, packing a small overnight bag. She had made a decision. She was going to drive to Portland to see her mother. She couldn't bear the isolation, the clinical precision of her existence, for one more day. She needed family. She needed warmth. She was zipping the bag when Brenton entered the room. He didn't slam the door. He never slammed doors. He just closed it with a soft, ominous click. "And where do you think you're going?" he asked. He was still in his bespoke suit, the silk tie perfectly knotted. I'm going to see my mother, Brenton. I just need a few days." "No." "What? Brenton, I'm not asking for permission. You are never to leave this house without my knowledge. You know the security protocol, and you are certainly not driving to Oregon in this storm, in your condition." "My condition is pregnancy, not a terminal illness," Lauren snapped, her voice rising. "I am going. I need to see my family. I need to tell them about their grandchild." "I told you," Brenton said, advancing on her, his voice dropping to a dangerous hush. "We announce it at the gala. It is not up for discussion. The Montgomery family has a way of doing things." "I am sick of the Montgomery way," Lauren shouted, grabbing her bag. "I'm sick of this house. I'm sick of you treating me like one of your acquisitions. This baby is my baby too, and I will not have it raised by a man who sees it as a line item." She pushed past him, heading for the landing, for the great marble staircase. "You will not defy me, Lauren," he hissed, following her. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in. "Let go of me, Brenton. You're hurting me." They stood at the very top of the spiral. The rain hammered the skylight above them, and the gleaming marble steps seemed to fall away into a dark, echoing abyss. "You are my wife," he said, his face a mask of cold fury. "You are carrying my child. You will go where I say. You will do as I say. You are mine." "I am not," Lauren screamed, wrenching her arm free. In her anger, she stumbled, her free hand flailing. Her fingernail, freshly manicured for a gala she now refused to attend, caught on the lapel of his suit, the expensive silk ripping with a small zit sound. Brenton looked down at the tiny tear. He looked at her hand. He looked at her terrified, defiant face. And then he smiled. A small, awful smile. "You," he said, "have become a liability." He placed his 2 hands flat on her back, and he shoved. It was not a violent, angry push. It was a deliberate, calculated leveraging of his weight. It was the same motion one would use to move a piece of furniture. Lauren's shriek was cut short as she pitched forward. There was no time to grab the railing. She cartwheeled, her head striking the second step with a sickening, hollow crack. She tumbled, a terrible, boneless avalanche of limbs, down the long, cold marble cascade. She came to rest at the bottom, crumpled on the foyer's polished floor, a halo of dark blood beginning to spread from beneath her head. At the top of the stairs, Brenton Montgomery stood perfectly still. He smoothed the lapel of his jacket. He listened to the rain. He listened to the horrifying, gurgling silence from the woman below. He waited a full 60 seconds. Then, he calmly reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and dialed 911. "My wife," he said, his voice a perfect facsimile of mild panic. "She's pregnant. She's fallen down the stairs. Please send help." The 911 dispatcher, a woman named Linda, would later testify that the call was one of the strangest she had ever taken. 911. What is your emergency? Yes, this is Brenton Montgomery. My address is 4400 Crestview Drive. My wife, she's taken a tumble. Down the main staircase. She's not responding. His voice was steady. There was no hysteria, no sobbing, no breathless panic. It was the voice of a man reporting a data entry error. Sir, is she breathing? There was a pause. Not the pause of a man checking, but of a man calculating his next line. I can't tell from here. I'm at the top of the stairs. It's a long way down. Sir, you need to go to her. You need to check for a pulse. Is she bleeding? Yes, Brenton said, his footsteps finally audible, slow and measured on the marble. Click, clack, click, clack. Yes, there's a great deal of blood from her head. Oh, Lauren. The feigned anguish was 1 second too late. She's pregnant. She's 18 weeks pregnant. Help is on the way, sir. The paramedics are being dispatched. I need you to check her airway. The first wail of sirens cut through the sound of the rain. Brenton had waited just long enough. They're here, he said, a note of genuine relief in his voice. The gates are open. Please, hurry. He disconnected the call. The first on the scene were 2 paramedics, followed by a patrol car. They found Brenton Montgomery kneeling beside his wife, one hand on her shoulder. But his suit trousers were impeccably clean, as if he'd only just knelt. Lauren was a ruin. Her breath was shallow, a ragged, wet sound. She slipped, Brenton said, standing up to let them work. She was angry. She was running. She just slipped. Her head, she hit it so hard. The paramedics worked with frantic efficiency. They saw the cranial trauma, the unnatural angle of her left arm, and the devastating amount of blood matting her clothes. They got her on a backboard, into the ambulance, and raced toward Harborview Medical Center. Brenton rode in the front of his own Bentley, driven by his security chief, following the ambulance. In the chaos, no one but the housekeeper noticed the small, dark figure huddled by the kitchen service door. Marta Petrov, a Bosnian woman who had been with the Montgomery family for a decade, had seen it. Not the push itself. She had been in the main kitchen, polishing silver that was already clean, a nervous habit when Mr. Montgomery was in one of his moods. She heard the shouting. It was rare for Lauren to shout. She heard Lauren scream, "I am not." And then she heard Brenton's voice, too low to make out the words, but the tone, it was like ice. Then the shriek. It was a sound Marta would hear in her nightmares for the rest of her life. It wasn't just a sound of fear, it was a sound of ultimate betrayal. It was followed by a series of horrific, percussive thuds. Thud, thud, thud. Crack. Marta had dropped the silver. She ran into the massive foyer just in time to see Lauren's body come to rest at the bottom, and she saw Mr. Montgomery, a tall, perfect silhouette, standing at the top, unmoving. He didn't scream. He didn't run down. He just watched. Marta's hand had flown to her mouth to stifle her own cry. This involuntary movement caught Brenton's eye. He looked down, past the body of his wife, and his gaze locked with Marta's. It was not a look of panic or fear or, "Oh God, you saw." It was a look of simple, cold command. It said, "You saw nothing." Marta had fled, her heart hammering, back to the kitchen, out the service door, and into the soaking rain, hiding behind a large ornamental hedge. She watched the ambulance arrive. She watched them take Mrs. Montgomery away. She saw Mr. Montgomery get into his car, his expression as placid as if he were heading to a board meeting. She knew what she saw. She saw a man who did not grieve. She saw a man who had waited. At Harborview, the trauma team descended on Lauren. The news came in brutal waves. Severe cranial trauma, We have significant brain swelling, the ER doctor, a Dr. Kent, told Brenton. We need to drill a burr hole to relieve the pressure immediately. Do it. Whatever it takes, Brenton said, rubbing his temples. There's another complication, the doctor said, his voice gentle. The fall, the trauma, it induced a catastrophic placental abruption. We did an ultrasound. There's no fetal heartbeat. The baby, your child, is gone. We have to perform a D&C to save her life. We need your consent, Mr. Montgomery. Brenton closed his eyes. He put one hand on the wall. For a moment, he looked like a man about to collapse. You lost the baby? I'm so terribly sorry. The fall was too much. We have to focus on Lauren now. Brenton nodded, taking a sharp breath. Yes, of course. Save my wife. Do whatever you have to do. He sat in the private waiting room, a sterile beige box reserved for billionaires and politicians. His security detail stood outside. He made one call. Not to Lauren's family, not to his own. He called his lawyer. Theodore, he said, his voice low. It's Brenton. We have a situation at Harborview. Yes. She fell. The complication is resolved, but she is in critical condition. I need you here. Not as my lawyer, as my spokesperson. And Theo, get Dr. Cole, the psychiatrist. Get him on retainer. I have a feeling, when she wakes up, she's going to be very, very confused. Detective Keith Holloway was 52, wore a trench coat that had seen better decades, and ran on stale coffee and a deep-seated suspicion of anyone who owned more than one house. He worked homicide for the Seattle PD, but due to the location, the Medina PD had requested his assistance on a high-profile accidental death. The death in question was that of a fetus, which in Washington state could trigger a manslaughter or murder charge if foul play was involved. Holloway arrived at Greylock at 4 a.m. The rain had finally stopped. The house was lit up like a cruise ship, but it was deathly silent. The patrol cops were rookies, looking starstruck and scared to touch anything. Where'd it happen? Holloway grunted. The rookie pointed. The main stairs, sir. Wife of Brenton Montgomery. Name's Lauren. Holloway whistled, looking up at the marble spiral. Some stairs. Looks like a Bond villain's house. He walked to the bottom, where a dark, smeared stain marked the impact point. The forensics team was already dusting for prints, but it was clear the scene was complicated. Okay, Holloway said, clicking his pen. What's the story? Husband says they were arguing. He's at the hospital. She was upset, ran past him and just slipped. Tripped on her robe, maybe. Tumbled all the way down. Tragic. Holloway knelt. He looked at the marble. It was polished to a mirror finish. Slipped. Where's the robe? In the ambulance with her. Paramedics cut it off. Holloway started walking up the stairs, slowly, one by one. He was looking for scuff marks, for any sign of a trip. There was nothing, just pristine, cold marble. You talked to the staff? Just one, a housekeeper, Marta Petrov. She's in the kitchen. She's pretty shaken up. Said she didn't see anything. Just heard the scream and the fall. Holloway reached the top landing. He stood where Brenton must have stood. He looked down. It was a dizzying, terrifying drop. You're at the top. Your pregnant wife just fell down this entire thing. What do you do? Run down, I guess. Call 911, the rookie offered. In what order? Holloway mused. He pulled out his phone and looked at the 911 call log. Call was placed at 10:32 p.m. Paramedics arrived at 10:38. He waited to call. Or he was very slow getting down those stairs. He went to the kitchen. Marta Petrov was sitting at a steel table, clutching a mug of tea, her hands shaking so hard it rattled against her teeth. Mom, I'm Detective Holloway. I know this is hard. I just need you to walk me through what you heard." Marta looked up, her eyes wide with a terror that went beyond just witnessing an accident. I was in kitchen. I hear loud voices. Mrs. Lauren. She was yelling. Never yells. What did she say? She say, 'Let go.' And I am not. Like that. Angry. And Mr. Montgomery." Marta's gaze dropped to her mug. His voice, low, always low. "I cannot hear. Then," she screamed, a bad scream. Then, boom, boom, boom. The sound. On the marble. And what did you do?" "I ran to the foyer. I saw her." Marta's voice broke. She was, oh God, she was broken at the bottom. "And where was Mr. Montgomery?" Holloway asked, keeping his voice gentle. Marta hesitated. The image of his cold, commanding eyes flashed in her mind. The fear for her job, for her son, whose college tuition Brenton's charity paid for. It all came crashing down. He was coming down the stairs, running. Yes, running to her. He was screaming, "Lauren, oh my God, Lauren!" Holloway watched her. She was a bad liar. Her eyes darted to the left, and she was twisting a small silver cross around her neck. She heard him running, or she saw him running. And then he called 911. Yes, right away. He was a mess, crying. This contradicted the 911 call. Linda, the dispatcher, had been specific. He was cold as ice, detective. Not a tear, not a crack in his voice. "Okay, Marta, thank you. You've been very helpful." Holloway left the kitchen. "Get her full written statement," he told the rookie, "and put a tail on her. She's lying." Holloway went back to the landing. The forensics tech, a woman named Chen, called him over. "Find something, Chen?" "Maybe." She was shining a UV light on the plush, dark carpet of the landing, just before the first marble step. "Nothing here. But look." She pointed to the wall, at the alarm panel, about 5 feet from the top of the stairs. There was a small, high-definition security camera built into it. A motion-activated one. "Is it on?" Holloway asked, his pulse quickening. "Looks like it," Chen said. "But the light's green, not red. It's not recording. Probably part of the main system. Let's go to the security room." They found it in the basement, a room that looked like NORAD. A 24-year-old security guy sat there, looking pale. "Detective, Mr. Montgomery's lawyer, Mr. Kincaid, already called. All footage is to be handed over to him. Attorney-client privilege. We're not to show you anything." "Bull," Holloway snorted. "This is a potential crime scene. I'm getting a warrant. In the meantime, you turn that footage over to me, or I'm arresting you for obstruction." The kid, sweating, caved. Okay, but there's a problem. The whole system, it rebooted at 10:30 p.m., a remote, scheduled update. All cameras were offline from 10:30 to 10:45. The fall happened at 10:31. "A scheduled update, on a Tuesday night. How convenient," Holloway said, his blood turning to ice. "Who schedules those updates?" "Only one person has that authority, sir. Mr. Montgomery." Holloway knew. He knew it in his gut. This was no accident. He went to the hospital. Brenton was in the waiting room, his head in his hands, with a slick, expensive-looking man in a suit, Theodore Kincaid, rubbing his back. He looked for all the world like a grieving husband. "Mr. Montgomery, Detective Holloway, I need to ask you a few questions." Brenton looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. Holloway wondered if he'd used mint or just practiced in a mirror. "Detective," Kincaid said, stepping forward, "my client is in shock. He just lost his child. His wife is in critical condition. This is not the time." "It's the only time," Holloway said. "Mr. Montgomery, your 911 call. You said you were at the top of the stairs when you called." Why didn't you go to your wife first?" Brenton's face crumpled. I was frozen. I couldn't believe it. The blood. I've never been good with that. I just panicked. And the security system. It went down for a scheduled update 1 minute before the fall. "You scheduled that, sir?" Brenton's mask of grief flickered. Kincaid stepped in again. "Detective, that is a proprietary system. We are not discussing security protocols." "One last thing," Holloway said, ignoring the lawyer. He held up a small evidence bag. Inside was a single acrylic fingernail, painted a pale pink. "We found this at the scene, on the landing. It's your wife's." Brenton looked at it, confused. "My officer also noted," Holloway lied, "a small scratch on your left cheek, and a tear on your lapel. Looks like she might have grabbed for you as she fell, huh?" Brenton's hand instinctively went to his cheek. There was no scratch, but the look in his eyes, pure, unadulterated panic, told Holloway everything he needed to know. "My client has nothing more to say," Kincaid snapped. "We'll be in touch." Holloway nodded. "Oh, I'm sure you will." As he walked away, he called the ADA's office. "Genevieve, it's Keith. I'm at Harborview." "Yeah, the Montgomery case. Listen, I'm going to need a warrant for his financials, his phone records, and that prenup. Why? Because he's lying. And I think he just murdered his kid." Lauren was suspended in a dark, thick fog. There were beeps and murmurs, and a dull, catastrophic ache that seemed to radiate from her very bones. For 9 days, she drifted in a medically induced coma while the swelling in her brain subsided. Brenton was a model of grief. He was at the hospital every day, sitting by her bedside, holding her hand. Always, it was noted, when a nurse was in the room. He issued a public statement through his lawyer, Theodore Kincaid, asking for privacy during this unspeakable tragedy. He spoke of his shattered dream of fatherhood and his unwavering devotion to his wife's recovery. He had Lauren's family flown in on his private jet and put them up at the Four Seasons. He was an ocean of calm, supportive sympathy. Lauren's mother, distraught, clung to him, weeping. "Thank you, Brenton. Thank you for taking such good care of our girl." "She is my world," Brenton had replied, his voice thick with what everyone assumed was emotion. But Detective Holloway wasn't buying the performance. He was digging. And what he found was not a portrait of a happy marriage, but a hostile takeover. The prenup was the first domino. It was 300 pages long, drafted by Kincaid's firm. It was ironclad. In the event of a divorce, Lauren Montgomery would walk away with $500,000. A pittance relative to his $500 million. It was hush money, designed to ensure she couldn't write a book. But Holloway found the one clause that mattered, Clause 44B, the dynasty provision. It stated that if the marriage produced a viable heir, the divorce settlement was null and void. Upon the birth of a child, Lauren would be entitled to a $50 million trust, non-negotiable, and full custody rights, with child support calculated at 2% of Montgomery's annual net income. The baby wasn't an heir. The baby was a $50 million insurance policy. He didn't want a divorce, Holloway explained to ADA Genevieve Russo, a sharp, no-nonsense prosecutor. He wanted a cheaper divorce. "It's a motive, Keith, but it's thin," Russo said. "We can't prove he wanted a divorce." "Oh, yes, we can," Holloway said, dropping a second file on her desk. "Meet Corinne Shaw, 28, runs a boutique art investment firm. Brenton's company has been her primary angel investor for the last 6 months. They've had business dinners at the Canlis restaurant 12 times, and I have hotel receipts from a business trip to Zurich 2 weeks ago. 1 suite, king bed." He wasn't trying to save his marriage, Genevieve. He was planning his next one. The motive was now crystal clear. Brenton wanted out. He wanted Corinne. But he couldn't divorce Lauren while she was pregnant without triggering the dynasty provision. If she lost the baby, however, and then he filed for divorce, she would be back to the original $500K payout. He wasn't trying to kill her, Russo realized, her blood running cold. He was trying to kill the baby. He pushed her to cause a miscarriage. Project Miscarriage, you called it. But he pushed too hard, or he just didn't care. He calls it collateral damage in his world, Holloway said. Now we just have to prove he pushed her. Their chance came on the 10th day. Lauren's doctor slowly reduced the sedatives. Her eyes, bruised and yellowed, fluttered open. Her mother and Brenton were in the room. "Baby! Oh, my baby, you're awake!" her mother cried, rushing to her side. Lauren's eyes wouldn't focus. Her head felt like it was full of wet concrete. "Mom?" Her voice was a dry croak. What happened?" "You fell, darling," Brenton said, his voice smooth as silk. He stepped into her line of sight, his face a perfect mask of concern. "You were at the top of the stairs. You slipped. You've been asleep for a long time." Lauren stared at him. The fog was thick, but a memory, sharp and terrifying, was trying to cut through. An argument. His cold face. The rain. "The baby," Lauren whispered, her hand moving instinctively, patting the flat, empty space below her ribs. My baby." Her mother started to sob. Brenton's face tightened. "Lauren, darling, the fall. It was too much. The baby didn't make it." The world, which had been blurry, snapped into horrific focus. The sterile room, the IV in her arm, the emptiness. A wail, thin and animalistic, tore from her throat. No. Lauren, calm down. The doctor said you must remain calm," Brenton said, putting his hand on her. The second his skin touched hers, the fog evaporated, replaced by a lightning strike of pure, unadulterated terror. She saw it. The landing. The rain. His eyes. Not angry, not sad, just empty. His hands, his two strong hands, planting themselves on her back. Lauren shrieked, batting his hand away as if it were a spider. "Get away from me!" she screamed, her voice raw. You did this! You pushed me!" Her mother gasped. "Lauren, what are you saying? You're confused, baby." "He pushed me, Mum. He pushed me." A nurse ran in, followed by a doctor. Brenton had backed away, his hands up, his face a picture of stunned, wounded innocence. "She's hysterical," the doctor said, preparing a sedative. "He pushed me," Lauren wept, as the drug began to pull her back under. Don't let him near me. He pushed." Her eyes rolled back, and she was out. When she woke again, 12 hours later, there was a new man in the room. He was older, with kind eyes and a grey beard. Her mother was not there. Brenton was not there. "Lauren, my name is Dr. Warren Cole," he said, his voice a soothing baritone. "I'm a specialist in trauma-related memory recovery. Brenton, your husband, he retained me to help you. He's terribly worried about you. Where is he? Where's my mum? Your mother is resting, and Brenton has agreed to stay away for a bit while you're in this agitated state. Lauren, what you're experiencing is very common. It's called confabulation. Your brain has suffered a massive trauma. It can't find the memory of the fall, so it creates one. It's looking for someone to blame. And your husband, who you were arguing with, he's the easiest target for your brain to cast in that role." "No," Lauren whispered, tears welling. It wasn't a confab. I remember his hands." "You remember the argument," Dr. Cole said gently, "and your fear. Your brain is just filling in the rest with a nightmare." "Lauren, Brenton is devastated. He's been here day and night. He loves you. You just need to rest. You need to let this false memory go." Lauren, weak, confused, and drowning in grief, had no strength to fight. She closed her eyes. A false memory. A nightmare. It had to be. Because the alternative was too monstrous to comprehend. Detective Holloway, however, was not bound by medical sedatives. He had been barred from her room by Kincaid and her specialist, Dr. Cole. "He's insulating her," Holloway fumed to Rousseau. "He's got his own shrink in there, gaslighting her before she's even fully conscious. We've got to get to her." "We can't," Rousseau said. "She's his wife. Kincaid will have us all fired for badgering a victim. We need something else. We need the housekeeper." Marta Petrov had not slept in 10 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mrs. Montgomery's body at the bottom of the stairs. And worse, she saw Mr. Montgomery's face, his eyes cold and dark, staring at her from the landing. The day after the fall, she had been called into Mr. Kincaid's office. "Marta," the lawyer said, all false kindness. "Mr. Montgomery is so grateful for your years of service. He knows this has been a terrible shock for you." He slid a check across the table. It was for $50,000. "A bonus," Kincaid said, "for your discretion and your loyalty." Marta looked at the check. It felt dirty. I do not want—" "Of course you do. And," Kincaid continued, opening a file, "I've just received wonderful news. Your son, David. His application to the Montgomery Foundation's Young Leaders Scholarship. It's been approved. Full ride to Georgetown, plus a paid internship at our D.C. office. We're so proud to invest in his future." Marta's blood ran cold. It wasn't an offer. It was a threat. "We own your son." "You saw nothing, Marta," Kincaid said, his voice hardening. "You heard a tragic accident. Mrs. Montgomery was hysterical. She tripped, and she fell. Mr. Montgomery is a grieving hero who tried to save her. That is the only story. Do you understand me?" "Yes," Marta whispered, her hands trembling. A tragic accident." "Good. Now go home. Take a few weeks off. On us." Marta had taken the money. She had cashed the check. Her son had called her, weeping with joy about Georgetown, and every dollar of it felt like 30 pieces of silver. Detective Holloway knew he had one shot. He couldn't go to her house. Kincaid would have eyes on her. He waited. He followed her to St. James Cathedral, where she went every morning to light a candle. He sat in the pew behind her. The cavernous church was empty, save for the two of them, the air thick with the smell of incense and old guilt. "He bought your silence with your son's future, didn't he, Marta?" Holloway said, his voice a low rumble. Marta jumped, stifling a scream. She crossed herself, her eyes wide with terror. "Detective, you should not be here. I have nothing to say. I'm not here for a statement. I'm here for a confession. Yours." Holloway moved into the pew beside her. "You lied to me. You said you heard him running and crying. The 911 dispatcher says his voice was like ice. You know what I think, Marta? I think you saw him. I think you saw him standing at the top of those stairs, waiting. No, I saw what I said." "You're lighting a candle," Holloway said, gesturing to the flickering votives. "For who? For Lauren? For the baby? Or for your own soul? Because you've damned it, Marta. You've let a man get away with murdering his child, and you're letting him convince that poor woman she's crazy." Marta broke. A low, wretched sob escaped her. He will destroy my son. He told me. My David, he is a good boy. He has a future. What could I do? You can tell the truth, Holloway said, his voice softening. This man, this thing, he holds your son over you. But the district attorney's office? We can protect you. We can offer you full immunity. We can put you in witness protection, you and your son. We can get David into a different school, under a new name, where Brenton Montgomery's blood money can't touch him. You can do this? I will do this, Holloway swore. But you have to give me the truth, the whole truth. Right now. Here, in God's house. Marta stared at the statue of the Virgin Mary, tears streaming down her face. She took a shuddering breath, the weight of a dozen lies lifting from her shoulders. I was in the kitchen, she began, her voice barely a whisper. I heard the fight. Mrs. Lauren, she found a gift bag from a jeweler, a necklace with the initials CS. Holloway's eyes widened. Corinne Shaw. She screamed at him, Marta continued. She said, "Who is she, Brenton? Who is CS?" He told her she was being hysterical. She said, "I am not your property. This baby is my life. It's my way out." And Brenton? Marta's face hardened with the memory. His voice. I will never forget. It was not human. He said, "You're right. It is your way out." She screamed. Then I heard her say, "No, Brenton, don't!" And then the sound, the falling. "And you ran out," Holloway pressed. "What did you see? Tell me exactly what you saw." "I saw her. At the bottom. She was not moving. And I looked up." Marta's voice dropped. "He was there, at the top. He was not moving. He was just looking. His hand, it was on the lapel of his jacket, where she must have grabbed him." "The broken fingernail," Holloway breathed. "Yes, and he just stood there. For a long time. A full minute. He was just watching her. To make sure? I don't know. He was like a statue. A marble statue. He did not run. He did not cry out. Then he saw me. He saw me in the foyer. And his eyes. Detective, his eyes. They were not sad. They were satisfied. And then he called 911? No, not then. He walked down the stairs. Slowly. He nudged her. With his shoe. His foot. He nudged her side. Marta was openly sobbing now, hiding her face in her hands. He nudged her. Like she was garbage. And then he took out his phone, and his face, it changed. It arranged itself into grief. And he called the police. And he started to cry. But they were not tears, Detective. It was a performance. Holloway had it. It was the pause, the calculated wait, the nudge with the foot. This wasn't a man who had panicked. This was a man who had confirmed. "Marta Petrov," Holloway said, standing up. "You are a material witness to a capital crime. Let's go get your son." 3 hours later, Brenton Montgomery was at a grief counseling session with Dr. Cole and Lauren's mother, explaining why Lauren's hysterical accusations were a symptom of her trauma. Detective Holloway and 2 uniformed officers walked into the room. "Mr. Montgomery," Holloway said, "I have a warrant for your—" "This is outrageous," Kincaid said, appearing from the next room as if summoned. "You are harassing my client." "Brenton Montgomery," Holloway said, ignoring him and walking right up to the billionaire. "You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Lauren Montgomery and the second-degree murder of baby boy Montgomery." Brenton's mask didn't just crack, it evaporated. His face turned a deep, mottled red. The performance was over. You dare!" he hissed, his voice a venomous whisper. "I dare," Holloway said, pulling out the handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you use it." As they pulled him from the room, Lauren's mother just stared, her face ashen, the word murder hanging in the air. The grieving husband was gone, replaced by a monster with cold, furious eyes. The trial of the state of Washington vs. Brenton Montgomery became the Marble Staircase trial, a media event obsessed with wealth, betrayal, and violence. The courtroom was a circus. On one side sat Brenton, immaculate in a Tom Ford suit, flanked by his legal team. He looked bored, as if this were a hostile zoning board meeting. In the front row, brazenly, sat Corinne Shaw. On the other side sat Assistant District Attorney Genevieve Rousseau. Behind her sat Detective Holloway, and in a wheelchair, Lauren Montgomery. Lauren had refused it at first, but Rousseau had insisted. "You will let them see, every single day, what he did to you. Let the jury see the woman he tried to throw away." Kincaid's defense was simple and brutal. Accident, hysteria, and greed. "This is a tragedy," he boomed, "but it is not a crime. It is the story of a clumsy, emotionally volatile woman, Lauren Montgomery, who, in a fit of pregnant rage, attacked her husband. She slipped, she fell, and when she awoke, addled by medication and guilt, her opportunistic mind invented a fantasy where she is a victim. This isn't a prosecution, ladies and gentlemen, it's a shakedown." Rousseau's opening was quiet. She simply walked to the jury box and held up a single crime scene photo of the bloody marble. "This is not a shakedown," she said, her voice trembling with controlled rage. "This is blood. The blood of Lauren Montgomery, and the blood of her unborn son. This is not the scene of an accident. This is the end of an execution. I will prove to you that this man," she pointed at Brenton, "a man obsessed with control, made a cold, financial decision. His wife and the child she carried had become a liability. So he liquidated that liability. He pushed her down those stairs to induce a miscarriage, to get a cheaper divorce. He didn't just want her gone. He wanted her erased." The trial was brutal. Kincaid's team brought in expert witnesses who testified the fall was entirely consistent with a forward slip. They brought in Dr. Warren Cole, the psychiatrist, who testified that Lauren's memory of the push was a clear case of confabulation and trauma-induced delusion. Kincaid's cross-examination of Lauren was a masterclass in cruelty. "Mrs. Montgomery, isn't it true you were clumsy?" "Aye, sometimes." "Isn't it true you had fainted twice that month? That you were suffering from vertigo related to your pregnancy?" "Yes, but, and isn't it true," Kincaid roared, "that you were furious at your husband, that you were screaming at him, that you tore his jacket?" Yes, I was angry, but You were angry because you were afraid you were being replaced, afraid you were about to lose your golden goose. And in your rage, you ran, you slipped, and you fell. Isn't that what really happened?" "No," Lauren wept. "He pushed me. I remember his hands." "You remember nothing," Kincaid spat. "You remember a blank space, and you filled it with a lie." Lauren was devastated. Kincaid had made her look like a hysterical, greedy liar. Then, Genevieve Rousseau called Marta Petrov to the stand. Kincaid objected, claiming she was a disgruntled employee, but Judge Patricia Langford overruled him. Marta, now in witness protection, was calm and unshakable. She told the story. The fight wasn't just an argument, it was specific. "Mrs. Lauren, she found a gift bag from a jeweler, a necklace, with the initials, CS. Holloway's eyes widened. "Corinne Shaw." "She screamed at him," Marta continued. "She said, 'Who is she, Brenton?' He told her she was hysterical. She said, 'I am not your property. This baby is my life. It's my way out." "And Brenton?" Russo asked. Marta's face hardened. His voice, I will never forget. He said, "You're right. It is your way out." She screamed. Then I heard her say, "No, Brenton, don't." And then the sound, the falling. "And you ran out?" Russo pressed. "What did you see?" "I saw her at the bottom, and I looked up." Marta's voice dropped. He was there, at the top. He was not moving. He was just looking. "How long, Mrs. Petrov?" "A minute. A full minute. He was watching her. Then he walked. He did not run. He walked down the stairs." "And what did he do when he got to the bottom?" Marta took a breath. He nudged her. With his foot. His expensive shoe. He poked her to see if she was finished. Then, and only then, did he change his face and call for help. The jury was horrified. The image of a man nudging his dying, pregnant wife with his foot was more powerful than any forensic report. The final witness was Brenton Montgomery. Against Kincaid's advice, Brenton insisted on testifying. His ego demanded it. He was smooth, charming, the grieving husband. He loved his wife, was ecstatic about the baby. Corinne Shaw was a valued colleague. Then it was Russo's turn. "Mr. Montgomery," she began, "you're a man who values precision. Your entire empire is built on it. Timing, details. I believe in excellence." "Yes," Brenton smiled. "Good. Let's talk about the details." She played the 911 call. The courtroom listened to his calm, flat voice. "My wife. She's taken a tumble." "You sound," Russo said, "like you're reporting a missing package, not a dying wife. Why were you so calm?" I was in shock. People react differently." "Yes, they do. Now let's talk about Clause 44B of your prenuptial agreement." Brenton's smile vanished. Kincaid shot to his feet. "Objection? Relevance?" "It is the entire relevance, Your Honor," Russo countered. "It is the motive." "Overruled," Judge Langford said. "Proceed." For the next hour, Russo laid out the motive. She showed that a divorce with a baby would cost Brenton over $50 million, plus 2% of his income for life. A divorce without a baby would cost him $500,000. One time. It's a good deal, isn't it, Mr. Montgomery? $500,000 to erase a wife and a baby. But you had to act fast, didn't you? She was 18 weeks. "This is absurd," Brenton snapped, his composure finally breaking. "I am worth $500 million. You think I would do this for money?" "No," Russo said, walking closer. "You didn't do it for money. You already have money. You did it for control. You couldn't control the fact that she was pregnant. You couldn't control the fact that this child was about to cost you. You couldn't control her. And Brenton Montgomery hates to lose control." She then held up the evidence bag with the broken fingernail. "And you couldn't control this either, could you? This is Lauren's fingernail, found on the landing, not on the stairs. And the fibers embedded in it, they match one thing." She held up the bag containing the silk suit jacket Brenton wore that night. "They match this jacket. She didn't slip, Mr. Montgomery. She was pushed. She grabbed onto you as you did it, and she left her mark. You are a man obsessed with details, but you missed one." Brenton's face was white. He stared at Russo with a look of such profound, murderous hatred that a juror in the front row physically recoiled. "No further questions, Your Honor," Russo said. The jury deliberated for 4 days. Brenton Montgomery, arrogant to the last, sat in the courtroom, smirking at Russo, absolutely certain he was going to walk free. He always had. The jury has reached a verdict. Lauren sat in her wheelchair, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. The foreman stood. On the charge of attempted first-degree murder of Lauren Montgomery, how do you find? Guilty. A gasp went through the courtroom. Lauren's mother burst into tears. On the charge of second-degree murder of baby boy Montgomery, how do you find? Guilty. Brenton's face did not move. Then the mask of civilization shattered. No! He roared, lunging to his feet, his chair crashing backward. You can't! He lunged at the jury box. It took 4 bailiffs to tackle him, slamming his expensive suit onto the defense table. He was screaming, a string of profanities, his face purple with rage. You're dead! He shrieked at Russo. I own this city! Get him out, Judge Langford ordered, pounding her gavel. He was dragged, still fighting, from the courtroom. Corinne Shaw had already slipped out a side door. The sentencing was 2 weeks later. Brenton was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands and feet shackled. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a sullen, dead-eyed fury. Kincaid argued for the minimum, calling it a momentary lapse from a man who had suffered. Then it was Lauren's turn to give her victim impact statement. She had refused the wheelchair. Slowly, painfully, aided by a simple steel walker, Lauren Montgomery walked to the podium. The courtroom was silent, save for the thud-click of the walker and the drag of her left foot. She stood at the podium, staring at the man who had tried to end her. Your Honor, she began, her voice quiet but strong. For 2 years I lived in a house of marble. It was beautiful and perfect and unbelievably cold. I lived with a man who was the same. She looked at Brenton. He refused to meet her gaze. He didn't just push me down the stairs. He tried to make me smaller. He tried to make me a liability he could manage. When I got pregnant, I thought it would save us. But he doesn't see people. He sees assets, and he sees liabilities. And my son, she choked on the word but willed herself to continue. My son was a liability, so he liquidated. That's the word you like, isn't it, Brenton? You liquidated my baby. You tried to liquidate me. But you failed. She gripped the podium. You took my mobility. You took my peace. You took my son. But you did not take my voice. She turned and, slowly, thud-click, she walked back to her seat. Judge Patricia Langford, visibly moved, fixed Brenton with a stare that could melt steel. Mr. Montgomery, she began, I have presided over this court for 20 years. I have seen killers of every stripe, but I am not sure I have ever seen a soul as bankrupt as yours. You lived in a palace, sir, but you are a man of the gutter. You saw your wife not as a partner, but as a possession. You saw your unborn child not as a gift, but as a ledger entry. You did not commit a crime of passion. You committed a crime of accounting, and now the bill has come due. On the charge of attempted first-degree murder, I sentence you to 20 years. On the charge of second-degree murder, I sentence you to 10 years. These sentences will be served consecutively. 30 years in the state penitentiary, Mr. Montgomery. No possibility of parole for 25. Brenton Montgomery slumped, as if his strings had been cut. 30 years. Outside the courthouse, Lauren Montgomery faced a sea of cameras. She stood, leaning on her walker, with Detective Holloway and Ada Russo at her side. What now, Lauren? A reporter shouted. Lauren looked up. She let go of the walker. She was unsteady, but she was standing. I am going to learn to walk again, she said. And then I am going to build. My baby, my son. His life mattered. I'm starting a foundation, the Lauren Foundation, for victims of domestic abuse, For women who need a voice. She took one shaky step on her own. It was a step away from the marble, away from the cold, and toward a new life, built not on a flawless, fragile spiral, but on the simple, ugly, and unbreakable scaffolding of survival. The 30-year sentence was justice, but Lauren's life and the life of her child were shattered forever. Brenton Montgomery's name is now synonymous with evil, a chilling reminder that wealth can hide the darkest of hearts, and that a house of marble can be the coldest prison of all. What do you think? Was 30 years enough for this calculated, cold-blooded act of cruelty? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. These stories are a powerful reminder to always look beneath the shiny surface. If you were moved by Lauren's story of survival, please show your support by hitting that like button and share this video to raise awareness for victims of hidden domestic abuse. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more true-life dramas that need to be told. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light. We'll see you in the next video.